What if there was a letter written by a man who personally knew Jesus that was deliberately hidden from the world? A letter that supposedly paints a picture of Jesus so intimate and shocking, it was deemed too controversial for the Bible. This is the story of the alleged letter of Joseph of Arimathea. Could reshape our understanding of one of history's most influential figures. The name Joseph of Arimathea might ring a bell. He's a fleeting character in the Easter story. He was the wealthy, respected member of the Jewish council who, against all odds, and at great personal risk, claimed the body of Jesus from the Romans and laid him to rest in his own tomb. At the very end, he saw it all. For centuries, whispers have persisted that Joseph didn't just perform this final, solemn act. The legend says he also left behind a written testimony of the man he buried, a letter filled with personal observations and a perspective on Jesus so profoundly human that it has been shrouded in mystery ever since. So, in this video, we're going to pull on that thread. We'll uncover the alleged contents of this lost letter, explore the tantalizing legends that surround it, and confront the historical debate head-on. Is there any truth to this story? What secrets does it supposedly hold? And if it's real, why was the world never meant to read it? Before we can get into the legend of the letter, we need to understand the man himself. Who exactly was Joseph of Arimathea? The Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all introduce him at the most critical moment, right after the crucifixion, and that right there is significant. In biblical scholarship, when a figure appears in all four Gospels, it gives real weight to their historical existence. While a few scholars question the details, the consensus is that Joseph of Arimathea was a real person. The Gospels sketch a consistent, if brief, portrait. He's a rich man, a respected member of the council, the same Supreme Court that had condemned Jesus. And this is our first clue that this man was complicated. He was part of the very establishment that rejected Jesus, but he was secretly a disciple, waiting for the kingdom of God. He was living with a profound internal conflict, caught between his public duties and his private faith. Then comes his moment of truth. As Jesus' followers scattered in fear, Joseph took the single greatest risk of his life. He went boldly to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. It's hard to overstate how dangerous this was. To ask for the body of a man executed for treason against Rome was to publicly align yourself with a criminal. It was a politically ruinous move, basically social suicide. He was outing himself as a sympathizer, risking his wealth, his status, and maybe even his life. Pilate, reportedly surprised that Jesus was already dead, granted the request. Joseph then bought a fine linen shroud, took the body down from the cross, wrapped it, and placed it in his own new tomb. This act of incredible bravery ensured Jesus received an honorable burial, fulfilling both Jewish custom and biblical prophecy. And then, he's gone. After this one pivotal act, Joseph of Arimathea vanishes from the Bible. This abrupt exit leaves a vacuum, a space where questions and legends begin to grow. What happened to this brave man? And for our purposes, did he leave behind any record of what he saw? He was a man of means and education. He would have been literate, and he was an intimate witness to the central event in Christian history. If anyone were to write down what they knew of Jesus, it would be him. And it's from this silence that the tantalizing legend of his lost letter begins to sprout. The idea that a man who risked everything for Jesus would want to preserve his memory feels almost necessary. This is where our journey moves from the pages of the Bible into the world of apocryphal traditions and whispered lore. The legend of Joseph's letter isn't just about a missing document. It's about a missing perspective. The Gospels are powerful theological works written to establish faith and build a religion. But the purported letter of Joseph offers something else, an intimate, human-to-human testimony, According to the legends, the letter is a deeply personal account of Jesus' character. It's said to be less concerned with his divinity and more with his humanity. The story goes that Joseph described Jesus as someone whose compassion was almost a physical force, a man who could see past the masks people wore and speak directly to their hearts. The most stunning parts of the legend are the unique, poetic descriptions of Jesus found nowhere else. One of the most cited claims is that the letter describes Jesus' eyes, saying they held a light that brought an unexplainable peace. Another powerful description, according to the legend, concerns his voice, which the letter supposedly likens to a soft but strong river that could touch the deepest parts of a person's soul. Think about how different this is from the canonical accounts. This isn't just Jesus, the miracle worker. This is Jesus, the person whose very presence had a tangible weight that transformed people. The letter, as the legend goes, is a window into a personal encounter with Christ, painting a picture of a man whose divinity was expressed through his perfect humanity. It's a magnetic portrait. It feels real. It fills in the emotional colors that the more formal gospel narratives sometimes leave to our imagination. It presents a Jesus that isn't distant, but accessible, relatable, and profoundly human. And that is precisely why its alleged existence is so controversial. But if this stunning account exists, where did it come from? And where is it now? This is where we have to get our hands dirty and start sifting myth from reality. Every good investigation eventually hits a wall, a point where theories run up against cold, hard evidence, and in the search for a physical letter from Joseph of Arimathea, we hit that wall hard, because here's the truth. As of today, there is no verified ancient manuscript of a letter of Joseph of Arimathea known to mainstream scholarship. It's not in a museum, a university, or a Vatican vault. So, was this whole thing a wild goose chase? Not exactly. The legend didn't come from nowhere. It's a ghost, but it's a ghost with a history. Our investigation now shifts from looking for a physical letter to hunting for the source of the legend itself, and that hunt leads us to the Christian Apocrypha collection of early Christian writings that were not included in the Bible. Within these hidden texts, we find our primary suspect, a document known as the narrative of Joseph of Arimathea. This is the historical kernel of our legend, but it's very different from the personal, poetic letter we've been describing. First, it's not a letter, it's a narrative, sometimes attached to a larger work called the Gospel of Nick. Second, scholars agree it's not a first-hand account. It was written much later, probably in the 4th or 5th century, hundreds of years after Joseph lived. Writing under the name of a famous figure was a common way to give a text more authority. The content is also far more legendary than personal. It tells a dramatic story of Joseph being imprisoned by Jewish elders after the burial, and then being miraculously rescued by the resurrected Jesus. It's a fantastical story, meant to make Joseph a hero of the faith. But what about those beautiful, intimate descriptions? The eyes with a peaceful light, the voice like a river. Here's the crucial twist. Those specific, poetic details are in the ancient narrative of Joseph of Arimathea or any other known early Christian text. They appear to be modern embellishments, creative interpretations that have spread through books, articles, and especially the internet, sometimes presented in fictional letters written for devotional purposes. Over time, these modern inventions got layered onto the old legend. So, the legend of the letter is a composite creation. A modern myth woven from the threads of a real, ancient apocryphal text, a narrative, and enhanced with speculative, poetic details that speak to a modern spiritual hunger. We're about to dive into the conspiracy theories around texts like these and ask why they were really kept out of the Bible. The answer might not be what you think. If you're finding this investigation fascinating, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss our future explorations into the world's greatest hidden histories. This brings us to the heart of the controversy. The idea of suppression. The most alluring part of the legend is the claim that this knowledge was deliberately hidden. The theory is intoxicatingly simple. The early church, in its quest to establish a unified doctrine, found the contents of Joseph's letter threatening. The argument goes like this. A letter that portrayed Jesus as so deeply human could have been seen as undermining the doctrine of his divinity. A more relatable Jesus might have empowered individual believers, reducing their reliance on the church hierarchy. So, to maintain control, they suppressed the letter, declared it heresy, and burned the copy. It's a powerful narrative. It paints a picture of a struggle for the soul of Christianity, a hidden truth versus a powerful institution. But is it true? When we turn from theory back to historical evidence, the conspiracy falls apart. There is simply no historical record of a letter of Joseph of Arimathea ever being debated for the canon and then actively suppressed. The story of its suppression is as much a part of the modern myth as the descriptions of Jesus. The real reason the narrative of Joseph of Arimathea and hundreds of other apocryphal texts didn't make it into the New Testament is more complex and, frankly, more boring. Forming the biblical canon wasn't a single event. It was a gradual process that unfolded over centuries. Bishops and theologians established several key criteria. First, apostolic origin. Was it written by an apostle or a close associate? The narrative of Joseph, written centuries later, failed this test immediately. Second, conformity to the rule of faith. Did it align with the core Christian message being taught in the major churches? The fantastical elements of the narrative placed it outside this tradition. Finally, continuous use. Was the text being widely read and revered in prominent Christian communities? The narrative was a more fringe text, never achieving the status of the four Gospels. So, it wasn't suppressed in a conspiratorial sense. It was simply categorized as interesting, but not as divinely inspired scripture. Its obscurity wasn't the result of a plot, but of a long, organic process of evaluation. So, our investigation has led us to a clear conclusion. The controversial, lost letter of Joseph of Arimathea is almost certainly not a real, historical artifact waiting to be found. It's a powerful legend, a modern myth built on an ancient text. The vivid details that make it so compelling are likely later inventions, and the story of its suppression is a conspiracy theory without evidence. Does that mean this was all pointless? Absolutely not. Because the final revelation is this. Even as a legend, the idea of Joseph's letter matters. The world needs to know this story. Not because the letter is real, but because the legend itself reveals a profound truth about faith, history, and the human heart. The power of this myth speaks to a deep and universal longing for a personal connection to the figures we revere. The official Gospels give us the bedrock of faith and the narrative of salvation. But the legend of Joseph's letter fills in the silent, human gaps. It gives us a sense of what it might have felt like to be in Jesus' presence. In a way, this legend is like spiritual fan fiction, written across centuries by the collective imagination of believers. It addresses a common pain point in organized religion, a feeling of distance from the divine. The legend of the letter closes that distance. It offers a vision of Jesus that doesn't replace the Gospels but enriches them, emphasizing the compassion and humanity at the foundation of his message. The story of Joseph's letter isn't a simple matter of true or false. It's a testament to the enduring human quest to understand the face of Jesus. The letter itself may be a ghost, but the spiritual impulse that created it, that search for an intimate, transformative encounter, is one of the most real and powerful forces in human history. So, we started out looking for a lost letter and found something else. A powerful modern myth that reveals more about our own spiritual desires than it does about the first century. We've seen how a brave historical figure, Joseph of Arimathea, became the anchor for a legend that grew from a real apocryphal text and was later embellished with beautiful, poetic details. The letter is a suppressed document, but a persistent story that fulfills a deep need for a personal connection to Jesus. But now, I want to ask you, what do you think? Does the historical truth of the letter matter less than the spiritual inspiration its legend provides? Does knowing it's likely a myth change its power for you? Let me know your thoughts and theories in the comments below. I really do read them. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, please show your support by hitting that like button, and be sure to subscribe for more investigations into the stories hidden just beneath the surface of what we think we know. Thanks for watching.